Welcome to Overcaffeinated and Out of Effs, the podcast for burned out, career-minded moms who are ready to stop pretending everything's fine and feel like themselves again. I'm your host, Christy Gamir, burnout coach for moms, licensed therapist, and mom of two. And I'm here to help you reclaim your energy, your identity, and your peace of mind. Whether you're lying awake thinking about the 87 things you didn't get done, or silently resenting the people you love most, this is your space to feel seen, supported, and not so alone. So grab your coffee, hot, cold, or day old, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Christy. Welcome to Overcaffeinated and Out of Effs. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Laurel Mellin, PhD. Dr. Mellin is a health psychologist and founder of Emotional Brain Training. With her colleagues at UCSF, she developed EBT and its conceptual basis, emotional plasticity theory. As an associate professor of family and community medicine and pediatrics and a faculty member at UCSF for 40 years, her interventions have been recognized by the American Medical Association as exemplary. Currently, she conducts research on EBT at UCSF and provides public education and health professional training and certification in stress overload and behavioral health. So, I have invited Dr. Mellin here today to talk about emotional brain training and how by changing the brain's pathways using simple scientific tools, we can turn burnout around. So, hello, Dr. Mellin. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's a total pleasure, Chrissy. I love what you're doing. As a woman who was a single parent for 3 children, running a nonprofit, a professor at the university, a book writer, and with a love for my private practice, I definitely understand burnout.
Yes, and I'm so excited. I mean, we were obviously just chatting a few minutes ago before we even got started, and it seems like you have so much to share. I can tell you're so excited about your work. I can tell that you really believe in the power and the benefits of this, and I'm so excited to hear about it. But I'm wondering if you can even just start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself and your story as a working mom. You know, what did burnout look like for you, and how did you get through that?
Well, what it looked like to me, I would say that I had some points in my life where it was just too much. One time when I was going through a divorce, which is not something anyone wants to do, but particularly not with 3 children
Mhm.
and a really unhappy situation and financial problems. And then when my mother died, where my father then became my responsibility, and he was quite ill, and he was very in need of caretaking for about 9 years. So between the loss of my mother and the need to support my beloved father, uh, it was time of incredible stress overload. And of course, I use this method EBT, to the hilt.
Mhm.
And that's why I totally believe in everyone having these tools. I actually don't know how people live without them. So essentially, I faced that and I got through it. And there was another time in my work life at the university where I was just a bad cluster of events of not getting grants, being sidelined. You know what happens in the real world of academia, which is pretty brutal. Um, and being able to get through it and having times when I would just sob. I mean, literally, I remember one time I just went to bed. It was like Christmas time. My children with their fathers. I was all alone, and the grant was due. The whatever. And it was just like just absolutely too much. I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and it was a really hard time. But there's a lot in the science and the tools of emotional brain training, which is just short for you can control the uncontrollable, which is the unconscious mind. It's the first method. What Freud wanted to do is find a way to rewire the unconscious mind because the unconscious mind is the boss. And nobody ever really did it. I mean, you can do it through a little bit through hypnosis. You can do it if you meditate for years or whatever, but EBT is a way to simply it's hard to imagine, but all you have to do is complain for about 5 sentences, find what you're most stressed about, and the exact circuit that is making you suffer in your unconscious mind presents itself to you in a form that you can switch off and rewire. And having said that, I need you to know that I'm a scientist. It's been in 14 studies, and it still feels like a miracle to me because it's not just a stress experience, it's a spiritual experience when you use it. So I would say the way I got through it is using EBT and discovering the mysteries of the unconscious mind. That is, if in those terrible moments, in the times of burnout, you can just shift a little into your body, into those resiliency pathways, you can not only repair your brain because your brain is damaged from what we're doing. Is your brain is damaged, and I can tell you about that damage. But you can actually move to a heightened level of effectiveness, joy, purpose, power, spirituality that you couldn't have been at if you didn't go through that burnout.
Okay, okay, wow. So when you talk about, the brain being damaged, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that. So stress and burnout, and how they are affecting the brain's pathways.
Right. Okay, there's 2 ways. I wanna tell you it in a way that is like you would could read on the internet,
Mhm.
in any scientific journal, and then I'm gonna tell you the way that you change the situation based on going into what's called the stress triangle in your brain. So first I'll tell you the regular one. Think of your emotional brain as this big old bowl full of all these circuits, kinda like overcooked spaghetti, just tons of it. It's just a big morass of these circuits, and nobody knows what to do about it. That's why we don't deal with our feelings because it just is all these emotional circuits. The only control we have as humans is in 2 structures, one, the prefrontal cortex or the thinking brain, and the other one, the hippocampus. The prefrontal cortex is kinda like the good parent saying, "Okay, what's going on here, folks? What are we gonna do? What seems to work?" And then the hippocampus is the one that says, "Well, in this context, this is actually okay," or, "In this context, don't worry about it, you can do something." And it kind of they both work together to take even a terrible situation and make it tolerable and even growth enhancing. And what happens in burnout is that those 2 structures get harmed. The neurons are changed. They're withering away from being pummeled by the stress chemicals. And so what you say is, I'm not thinking right. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know what to do." The problem is, if you looked online and said, "What do you do for burnout?" They would tell you all the things you're supposed to do, like exercise, rest, change your lifestyle, and none of that is really doable unless you have a pathway out that is actually based on the deeper structures of the brain, okay? Because the outcome of the stress is that you get harmed in your hippocampus and you get harmed in your thinking brain or your prefrontal cortex. But you can't directly change your prefrontal cortex, and you can't directly change your hippocampus because 'cause you're
Mhm.
control,
Mhm.
okay? And
Mhm.
so they tell you to do all these things that are really nice to do that you should be able to do, but if you're in burnout, you can't do them, or you can do them at such an ineffective level that it's gonna take you forever to get burned out, to get
Mhm.
rid of being burned out. In other words, your brain is a little bit fried.
Mhm.
So the reason EBT is uniquely powerful with this is you go to the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is something in the emotional brain, the unconscious mind that will not listen to thinking, awareness, decision making. It won't listen to cognitive stuff. So if you're trying to kind of be mindfully aware, it's not going to work for you. If you decide you're going to, meditate, you're not going to be able to meditate. If you say you're going to be mindfully aware, you're going to do it now and then, but your brain is in stress and it won't allow you to do it. And you might even judge yourself
Mhm.
able to do it, but do it in the brain savvy way, and I'm gonna show you what that is, okay? Are you
Okay.
up? Is it is this aligning at all with your thinking about this, Christy?
Yeah, no, absolutely, but it's helpful for you to for me to listen to you, explain it.
Okay. So, you wanna hear about the stress triangle?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So let's just go back to common sense here, which is that if you wanna fix a problem, you go to the source of the problem, not the consequence of the problem. The
Mhm,
consequence of the problem is we're burned out and we've got all these symptoms, and it makes sense to treat the symptoms because the symptoms cause us stress, right?
mhm,
But it's not gonna really be a direct hit. The place to go to is called the amygdala, and the amygdala is where all these stress circuits that we rewire in EBT are hanging out. They're stored there in the amygdala. It's about the size of a peanut. It's in the unconscious mind. You cannot reach it with thinking. When we discovered EBT, I'd been working on it since a young woman, since 28. I'm 76 now. And when I started out, I just knew that I would had to work with emotions because cognitive just doesn't work when people are really having problems, which everyone's having problems now. And so I started working with emotions and some research that I'd found from the 1940 on how it was about emotional connection. Well, to make a long story short, people started changing in ways that at the university we couldn't understand. We were curing things like obesity, anxiety, and other problems that are really hard to work around. We were getting results we could show in peer-reviewed articles in journals in research, and we really didn't know why it was working. And it would take about 25 years before the science was done that actually showed why it was working. About 2007, I'd been into it since 1988, and then once we really understood what it was doing, then we could actually look at how to fix it. So here's what is happening. We store all our experiences in the amygdala in what's called circuits. And when a circuit when something happens in our life, and we have a lot of stress, there's only 2 kinds of circuits. The circuits that are healthy, they're called homeostatic circuits or self-correcting circuits, or we just call them joy circuits because they lead to joy. And the other kind that are really the bad guys, they are the stress circuits. They're called allostatic circuits. They're called reactive circuits. And the reason they're such bad guys is unlike the good guys, the joy circuits, the homeostatic self-correcting circuits that just flicker around and, you're kind of feeling good, then you're feeling bad, you're just fine, but you're not stuck. They have no shut-off valve. So once you take in these stress overload circuits, they get stuck on, and then they activate other stress circuits, and pretty soon you've got this garage band going of misery, and then all of a sudden, your set point in your brain or the habit of your brain goes into stress because the brain says, "Okay, you're always gonna be stressed. I'll just put up with that. In fact, stress feels pretty good. That's kinda natural for you." So the set point goes down. Okay. So the question is not what's happening, but how do you fix it? So figure that if you have burnout, you have, and I'm not talking about your prefrontal cortex, I'm not talking about your hippocampus, because why focus on something that's not a solution? You've got to go to what the solution is. Your your amygdala is stuffed with these allostatic circuits and it's sensitized. So what happens is you can even have a little kind of thing happen, and all of a sudden, boom, you're just overreacting to it. And then it gets stuck on, and then you're reacting to something else. So you're going to rewire them. The way you do it is with EBT. What you do is you wake up in the morning and you say, "Hey, everybody, we're setting life here. Everybody else is stressed. I'm stressed, but I choose joy." And the reason you say joy is because they have shown since 2003, a guy named Antonio Damasio, who's this incredible neuroscientist, that really you're not just looking for a calm state. You're actually the most healing state is to get to joy, and joy is not happy, 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 you can eat a lot of ice cream, you can do a lot of stuff on happiness. Neural integration is connection of higher purpose where you're grounded in your body, you know what's really going on, you're trying to be a good person, and you're just present to the higher order meanings of life, and the chemicals from that will heal your amygdala, okay? So you say
Mhm,
to yourself, "I'm creating joy," and then the gift of EBT, which still astonishes me, and I've been teaching it for how many years? I've taught There's now about 500,000 people that have gone through it. Um,
Wow.
it's now in an app, so you get the app on our website at ebt.org, but you can't get it at the App Store because it's a nonprofit type place, so we can't afford what Apple charges us. So you have to go to ebt.org, and you get a membership where you got taught to do this, but all you figure out is your number, your stress number. 1 is
Mhm.
joy, all the way down to 5, I am really miserable, and you use the tools, and within a couple of minutes, you're back to a state of those healthy circuits working. So you teach your brain to be in joy and to use the gnarly pathways in your unconscious mind to process the emotions in a very weird way that begins with anger, and you do it pretty quickly and you get back to joy, and so your all of your joy circuits and that are healing you get stronger, and those burnout circuits get weaker, and that is how you do it. You go to the root cause, you go to your brain, you just do the stuff, you get in a group, so with other people that are burned out, we always do groups, you go in there, you get a telephone group, and you start using these tools, and your life will change in ways that you can't imagine because 'cause you're going right to the root cause in the brain of what has accumulated there through no fault of your own,
Mhm.
but only you can process the emotions. You can't drug your way out of it. You might need drugs if you're really, really stuck. You're gonna need some drugs maybe. Maybe you'll have an antidepressant, or maybe you'll treat your stomach pains or whatever. They are not going to fix you because these circuits in the emotional brain, that's why therapy can work and why we're
Mhm.
therapists and they're right here, right and left, because their patients are all really in stress overload. And the old way of talk therapy is just not gonna get down to those circuits because you have to actually activate the circuit, stay present to the emotions, and bring it back to joy. So you have to get to joy, and you learn how to do that, and in the process, some of those circuits are pretty gnarly, and so you actually, you hit back on them with these emotions until you clear them. But the way you judge whether it's working or not is not by trying. Don't try to change. Try to get to joy over and over again. Be in your group so you have the support system and you have other people you call during the week. It just takes 5 minutes to get to joy. And you notice that your brain is healed when you effortlessly do and think and feel different things. Because it's only when the unconscious mind has changed that you have freedom from those circuits. So, for example, let's say one of the things people do, we all do when we're, stressed is we eat. Okay. So people say, oh, go and take GLP-1s or go and change your diet. Those are both either hacks or a pathway to failure. The studies have shown that the GLP-1's a hack because it does not change the circuits in your brain. What it does is it gives you 10 times the GLP-1 your brain needs, so you go into starvation, and then you don't put your effort toward rewiring the circuits in your brain that would give you lasting change. Instead, you're dealing with nausea or the expense of it, and you're kind of on a high from it, but you don't get back to health. You don't get back to having
Mhm.
a brain that's not gonna do that. So with EBT, you say with people who come in for that, you just say, "Let's rewire your food circuit that activates the chemicals that drive overeating." The reason diets don't work is because the reason we overeat is because the stress chemicals in a circuit, one of these gnarly circuits like the burnout circuits, they're all the same, drives us to do it, and we have no choice but to do it, and then afterwards we say, "What did I just do?" You were biochemically drawn to overeating by not just GLP-1. There are actually 8 chemicals that drive overeating, and one's only one of them, and they're all stress related. When you get rid of the stress, you get rid of those chemicals. But we tell them, "Please don't diet. Just, try if you're gonna eat healthy, great, whatever, but change the circuit until you notice that you can't wait to have the healthy foods, that
Mhm.
foods don't appeal to you, and don't judge yourself for that. Just know that when they did appeal to you, it was because of your stress chemicals, not because of you." So, then you have proof that you've rewired the circuit, and then you have the security of knowing that you can have lasting weight loss. But essentially, focus on what you can do. Get to joy. Get into an EBT group, and I'll show you how to use some of these skills. They're amazing, but they're also very simple.
Well,
So
and yeah, and I would love to, to if you would be willing and able to do that. So you were talking a minute ago about, with diet, for example, right? Um, and which I think a lot of people can certainly relate to. I mean, GLP-1s have certainly become widely popular recently, and so I think that this is all, um, I think that that's a great example that a lot of people can certainly relate to. I'm curious about, so working moms in particular, let's say it's not necessarily diet related.
yeah.
I'm curious if you are able to share like another example of how a mom, could use some of these tools in a stressful moment. And yeah, if you're open to maybe even demonstrating,
Yeah,
those
sure.
techniques.
Okay. So the first thing is understand that you are gonna respond to your children, to your work, to your spouse based on what circuits activated. And there's the 2 kinds of circuits. So let's say if you notice that you are really irritated by your children, or you are really why you ever married this person. I need a new job or I need whatever. Check the level of stress in your brain. And if you are there's 5 levels of stress altogether. If you're at brain state 1, you're in joy and you are really sharper than a tack. You could cope with anything. If you're at brain state 2, you feel good and grounded in your body. So the 1 and 2 are those good kind of circuits, right?
Hmm.
And if you're at 3, you're definitely stressed. You're now in the emotional brain. You now are activating these stress overload circuits. 4, you're really stuck. You're not scattered, but you're stuck. And, you feel like there's no hope. You might feel depressed, or you're at 5, you're the reptilian brain's in charge, and you are completely flat out. It is never going to be better. So what you do is you say to yourself, I'm having all of these negative thoughts and these terrible emotions, and it's not me, it's a wire in my brain. Maybe it is me, but I'm gonna first clear the wire in my
Hmm.
brain, and if I still feel that way, I'll do something different about it. But what you do is you first use your power to control your unconscious mind, that circuit that is making you believe everything's so terrible, because it's all perceptual. It's all those chemicals. And so you say, "Okay, I'm gonna spiral up to joy." And you get your app out, or if you're in a group, which is fantastic, then you will call one of your connection buddies and they'll listen to you. It only takes 5 minutes and, you'll be back to joy. And you'll do that for everything. You use the same skill set. It doesn't matter whether it's a kid that is you have a child that's irritating you beyond belief, you just cannot take the whining and crying anymore, or the adolescent acting out anymore, or you think, your spouse is in the same spot as you are. Let's say you have a husband or a wife, whatever you have, and you say to yourself, "This relationship's not a go." I will say, one thing I wanna say that the most important thing I'll say to you today is that the only time that relationships are really intimate is when you're in that brain state 1.
Hmm.
When you're at brain state 2, the relation that you really the brain can accomplish intimacy. It can both
Hmm.
connect with ourselves, be aware of our own feelings and needs, connect with the other person back and forth. So there's intimacy back and forth. At 2, it's not quite as good, it's more transactional, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. Once you cross that line so that those stress overload circuits are controlling you, we treat ourselves like objects and we treat other people like objects, okay?
Hmm.
That it's matching in a couple, so both people are feeling that way. Some of the We've had donations of actually millions of dollars to EBT, and all the donations have not come from it fixing anxiety or depression or PTSD or weight or addiction. Marriage.
Okay. Wow.
Current marriage counseling does not fix these circuits. So what you do is first, if in fact you're finding yourself not that satisfied in your relationship, I do not suggest couples counseling. I suggest EBT. And the reason is in EBT, what we say is your first relationship is with yourself.
Hmm.
And until you have that connection to yourself and can spiral up to 1, So in the presence of your partner that at this point you're really judging them, you don't know what could transform your relationship quickly because everyone's in brain state 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And typically, if you're having marital problems, particularly I had 3 children and I went through a
Mhm.
divorce. Can you imagine how terrible that was?
Mhm.
Terrible.
I can
Anyway,
imagine.
really bad. So, essentially, if you say, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in this relationship. I don't know if it'll ever get better. I know that I'm in this now, but I know that it's really about me and my relationship with myself, and do I have the skills to get back to a state of connection in the presence of someone else who's really stressed out and really obnoxious, and actually set the boundaries and give the love that I can. And you can only do that when you're in brain state 1. So what we do is we get people to get to 1 in the relationship. If one person does, the old relationship is over because in very, very profoundly, uh, effective ways, you just the nuance is different. The way you respond is different. It's just natural. You're not gonna respond that same way. Focus on the couple, you focus on intimacy with yourself and the capacity to open that pipeline and be with others. Another thing that really helps if you're finding that relationships are an issue, because again, the relationships are the most sensitive to stress. So
Mhm.
maybe you can do fine at work and maybe you can do all these other things, but the relationships are probably going to suffer. Think of the person as being 5 people. Okay. Hold on. There's 5 different levels of stress in the brain. In each level of stress, we have different memories, we have different responses, we're really a different person. So when we marry someone, we marry the person who's in the think of it as a file drawer. They're
Mhm.
they're functioning at the top level of their brain, and we love them, they love us, they're gonna save our life, we're gonna save their life, this is the best thing on earth. Until about, what do you know as a therapist, is it 6 months or a year and a half, and then all the emotional trash and all the difficulties come up, and then you if you stay, it's because you've decided to change those circuits and
Mhm.
that healing that you didn't have before. But it always helps me to think about I have like, in my husband, I'm happily married now and have been for 12 years, but I was also single for 12 years where I did a lot of EBT, believe me, a lot of EBT. But the issue is that I think of my husband now, he's in a real bad space right now. And he's really burned out, he's really exhausted, and we've been everyone's been, challenged by the world situation and
Yeah, for
that.
sure.
And I think of him when he's difficult to be around, I said, "Well, that's my beautiful Walt when he's at brain state 5."
Mhm.
And and I don't like him at all, actually. And,
Mhm.
uh, and then, of course, when I'm at 5 I'm no picnic to be around either. So when you think about it as circuits being activated, you can say, well, you know, he's not always at 5. My job is to get to brain state 1 and either have the compassion I need for him, set the boundaries, I'm sorry I can't take that behavior right now, but it's only when I'm at brain state 1 that I can bring out the best in myself and also transform the relationship. There have been literally hundreds of people who have come to me and said, "If I didn't follow your rule, which is if you're in an abusive situation, get into professional care and get support. If your children are in an abusive situation, the same thing. But if it's not at that level, please stop and give yourself that time." It may only
Mhm.
take about 4 months, if you're doing coaching or therapy. If you've got a therapist who's EBT certified, you're gonna change much more rapidly. And the issue is, you change like, I do something where I take 6 sessions, and I said, "If I can't shift you enormously in 6 sessions, go to someone else." I teach them EBT, and they stop the old relationship, and
Mhm.
hopefully, by 6 sessions, they are in a different world. They'll continue with their therapy as they do, but I just want you to know that if you look at the partner and you say, "I don't think so," double check that it isn't about stress, because stress is what rewires the brain out of that loving connection. And anytime you're in a relationship where, you started off in love and you're not in that place anymore, what that means is, particularly for women who have children, the biochemistry of that, the hormones of that. I mean, when I was having children, all I cared about was children. I could care less about anything else. I
Mhm.
the baby monster, all of these hormones, and then in menopause, perimenopause, I mean, all this is going on. But the truth is that once you begin to see it based on circuits and begin to shift, so much of the stress goes away, and at least you have something you can do. The problem are some wires in my amygdala. I'm gonna rewire them one by one, and then your set point, your habit of the brain gets out of that stress state, and you begin to recover.
Well, and one of the things, as I'm listening to you talk, one of the things that I really love is that it doesn't have to be about both partners, getting to a one together, right? Because I know one of the things that a lot of moms struggle with when they are having challenges in their relationship is that they don't have control over their partner, right? And
Right.
so this idea that, well, I can just focus on me, I can focus on myself getting to that state of joy, and that in itself, because that's something I do have more control over, right? And that in itself is something that can be really helpful with this.
Right, and the issue is if you deal with it as if you wanna control them, you know how successful that is. But yeah. No, uh, yeah, that's not gonna work too well because the
No.
agency brain is the emotional brain, the unconscious mind. But this is kind of the catch-22 on this. I mean, Christy, I mean, you as a therapist know all this stuff, but the issue is if you go at it with your thinking brain and you get 2 people in the same room. I frankly have been divorced twice.
Mhm.
With both of the divorces, I married my childhood sweetheart that I met when I was 15. I married him at 21, and then we just grew up. Then I remarried, and I married someone who, um, who had had a lot of trauma I didn't know about, and it didn't come out until after we were married and I was pregnant with my 3rd child, which was real picnic, right? But
Mhm.
the issue was I went to 4 years of counseling therapy with both of them. And they never got into the, emotional brain, and it was very
Mhm.
expensive, and it just didn't work. This is before EBT. This is a long maybe 30 years ago, before EBT was really out and I was using it, but the issue is, um, that when you work at it from a standpoint of circuits and you say to yourself, "I am gonna control me, and that I am a healthy member of this relationship." And with EBT, there's a lot of price you pay of understanding what you contributed to it, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. But the issue is that you actually have a lot of humility because you
Mhm.
do appreciate your part of it, and you change yourself not for intimacy, but for integrity or
Mhm.
freedom or something so that your brain is now filled with these great circuits, and you have the
Mhm.
security of knowing that. But when you start connecting to yourself to the deepest part of yourself, your emotional and spiritual core, because the emotional brain's the seat of the soul, and you start spiraling up to one, and you start it's like a look in your face.
Mhm.
It's like a touch that you make or don't touch. It's like a time when you set a limit with them, but you don't set it as a screaming witch.
Mhm.
I do.
Yeah.
You're s
Yeah.
as a mature, connected person who's saying, "Sweetheart, that doesn't work for me. I love you a lot." At least I think I did it one time. And and but that doesn't work, and then when they give you a hard time, you're staying completely connected, and they can feel the difference immediately.
Mhm.
So, oddly enough, by releasing control,
Mhm.
focusing on yourself, you actually go into an amazing amount of control in your relationships, a relationship that brings out the best in you and brings out
Mhm.
in them. And you know what? I know we're limited on time, but I'd like to share what this tool is. It's one tool called the cycle tool is what you learn to use with complete precision, the more you use EBT. But can I share what that is? Because there's a real important point here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you feel like you have time, I know you have places you need to
I know.
get to, but yeah.
I wanna share this with you because it's so counter to what is typically taught in therapy, and it is so completely scientific, and it works 92% of the time to take you from stress to joy. It's that consistent. what you do is you complain, but you don't go on and on and on. You kinda collect yourself. So, uh, I'll do it about my husband right now. I don't have
Mhm.
a circuit right now, so I have to kinda fake it because 'cause I've rewired the circuit, but I wanna give you an idea. Um, so, so I say, the situation is that Walt and you notice I'm gonna be like a two-year-old because it's really the circuits of being a little kid, those really fundamental circuits at the bottom of our brain that are the problem, so don't be long about it, and don't be intellectual about it, that's a waste of your time. Insight plus 5 cents gives you a nickel. I'm gonna say, "The situation is, my husband right now has to go in and have hip surgery, he's on pain medications, he's stubborn as can be, and, whatever I say, he's obnoxious, nasty, and negative, okay?
Mm, okay.
5 sentences, okay? And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop thinking, because all I'm doing is using the EBT formula, which is a series of lead-ins, the front of a sentence, and then you use that with your thinking brain, and then you release all control, you turn your attention to your body because all of this burnout for whether you're burned out I'm talking about my husband right now, it could be work, your kids, menopause, health problems, it's all the same. You learn the process and you've got that for life. And so I say, um, then I have to release control and connect with my body. At this moment, my I do not feel like I'm working, but my unconscious mind, the stress brain, is working like overtime to figure out what I'm most stressed about because that's its job. It's the survival brain. And then only when I feel connected again, like I can be aware of the sensations in my body. Am I back at that higher state where I'm ready to go to the next lead in? I'm just going to show you the first part of this. So
Okay.
I wait. And actually, I'm a little activated about this. So I have a little and then your brain is gonna distill what you're most stressed about is. Remember, this is very quick. You can solve your problems not in 12 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour. You can solve it in about, maybe 3 minutes. Then so,
Mhm,
um, then I'm gonna say, "What I'm most stressed about is" and I wait for my body to tell me,
mhm,
and it might be, "I'm sorry to say this, but he is a jerk." Okay?
mhm.
I'll just
Yeah.
say he's a pain. I'll say he's a jerk, okay? He's not a jerk, he's a pain. Okay, he's a pain. Walt is a pain. Okay, then I'm gonna pause, and then I'm gonna do exactly the opposite of what we're told to do in traditional therapy, which is we must, at that moment if I do that, if I start to talk about it, this what's called an emotional blockade comes. I'm either depressed, anxious, numb, or whatever. All positive plasticity stops. And what EBT does is it bores through that emotional blockade and gets you right into the hotbed of the emotional brain where you can heal right in the moment. And it's by expressing anger in a very particular way that's productive and safe. It's passionate. And what I'm going to do is have a burst of anger that will do two things. It will both unlock the most extreme circuit in my brain that's making me feel that way, because it has to be unlocked or you can't rewire it.
Mhm,
If you can't relax your way into rewiring, you have to activate it. And then secondly, it'll completely clear that stress so that the rest of the emotions that I'll express, which is sadness, fear, and guilt, are loving, sweet, quick emotions. Sadness doesn't turn into depression. A balanced fear doesn't turn into anxiety. And
mhm,
guilt, my part of it, doesn't turn into shame. Okay? So it's real fast,
mhm.
So I'm gonna do the anger now. It might be scary to you a little bit, but it's called the anger procedure. I feel
Okay.
angry that, and what did I say? The topic was that
Your
he
husband was
is
going in for
but the
a hip
topic
procedure,
the little
yes.
short one, I can't remember it now because 'cause I'm a little stressed. The little one was he's a pain.
He's a
He's a
pain, yes.
he's a pain.
Not he's
Okay,
a jerk. He's a pain.
not he's a jerk, he's a pain. Okay, I feel angry that he's a pain. And then you go a little bit more, I can't stand it, he's a pain. And then you got to get to the bottom of your brain or forget it, you're not gonna activate that circuit. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. I really, really hate it that he's a pain. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Okay, right then it shifts. That's all you have to do.
Wow.
And
That's
now
amazing.
I've got tingles. I actually pop to joy because I don't have these
Mhm,
circuits anymore. But
mhm.
look at my arms, they're all full of because I'm in joy now. But if you still had some circuits down there, would you then you'd say, "My one deepest sadness is" just one. You go right to connecting with yourself and letting your brain, your unconscious mind, feel sad that he's hurting.
Mm.
Then instead of saying more sadnesses, because that's thinking brain oriented, you feel it go through your body until it fades. And the sadness, feel it until it fades. Now I've got goose pimples all over my body now. See, I am changing my circuit in my brain that's causing the burnout.
Yeah.
Then I feel sad that he's in pain, and I feel it until he fades, and then I feel afraid that he's gonna get really depressed.
Mm.
Okay, then I'm gonna feel that, and then you change your complete affect, and you get yourself in joy by fooling your brain into the fact you're in joy. You put your shoulders back, your chest out, your chin up, and you're actually using your body to put you sort of into a false high, really. You're back to one where you can think well, and you say, "I feel I feel, I do have some power here. I feel guilty. Why don't I just do the sensible thing and appreciate that this will pass. Appreciate that this will pass." And if there's no circuit there, you'll go up and you'll feel grateful, happy, secure, proud. You'll be in the positive emotions. You'll have set up your stress response. If you can't, you'll find the circuit that is causing you, and within a few minutes, you are gonna be in a glow state. That is how simple it is. And
Wow, yeah. I love how simple that is and how I mean, you said just a couple minutes, right? Which
yeah,
I imagine to a lot of people who have been, working at these things for a period of time that would have sound like a huge relief, I imagine.
yeah, yeah. It's emotions are quick, thoughts and very
Yeah.
all people are the same. You can teach them to your husband. My husband, I when I started dating him, I said, "Well, you probably got to get in an EPT group because I I I'm the founder of EPT, and
Mhm.
that's I talk about it all the time." So he gets in an EBT group, and, now we're EBT buddies, so when I'm at 5, like, I just was in talking with him, he's really in a very bad way, he can't get health insurance for his hip, and he's in terrible pain. And so I just listened to him use the tools, and there's tools specifically for stress overload, for when you just can't get out of it. There's like 4 or 5 tools that quickly get you out of it that are called damage control tools. So, it even gets you when you're more stressed. But anyway, whenever I'm running at a 4 or 5, I mean, several times a week, instead of us complaining to each other about problems, I say, "Will you listen to me spiral up to joy?" And he says, "Yeah, we do the cycle." And he listens for 4 or 5 minutes, and then we have a nice evening. So, it's just a life skill that we believe everyone should have.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm wondering because I imagine that we could, talk about this all day long. I can see how excited you are, and how passionate you are about your work. I also know that and I appreciate you taking the time to, share this example because I know your time is limited today. So I'm just wondering for people who do want to learn more about it, for people who want to learn more about your work, and you yourself, like where can they go to do that?
There's only one place. I actually am a New York Times bestselling author, and I have a bunch of books, but I don't recommend them. Uh, because I'd rather you just get in and get the program. You get the app, you get daily support, so you get someone talking to you, so it's easier to learn it, and you learn it in a community. There's only food stamps is EBT, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
ebt.org.
Okay.
You go to
Okay.
ept.org, get a membership. They're it all ranges from $29 a month all the way up to concierge service with daily support for a month for an intensive. Get whatever support you're able to get, and if within 1 month you don't notice a difference, we actually will refund your money for the basic
Wow.
membership because
Okay.
we can't believe how effective they are. So go to EBT, like food stamps, EBT, but it's a .org. Choose a membership, and every day of the week, there's providers there live that you can go to, and they'll guide you through it, and you'll start to find that your burnout is really about your amygdala, and you can change the circuits in your amygdala, and that's the pathway to lasting change and transformation.
Okay. So if they go to the website, right? So the website is where they can find the app. It's where they can find all these other, pieces of information to
Yes.
really sort of get going with us.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's great. And so that seems simple enough, right? So ebt.org, you said.
Yes.
So I will make sure that I include that in the show notes for everybody who is listening. So before we do wrap up for today, I'm just curious, is there maybe one final piece of advice, one final message? If there's one final thing that you wanted to say to the burned out working moms who are listening, what would it be?
What I want you to know is there is hope because your brain was actually your brain evolved to get you out of stress and into joy. Some of the things that you have gone through that has caused your brain to get affected by the stress is because of one thing. On the day you were born, you had all the inherent strength, goodness, and wisdom in your brain, the brain you have now, to move through that stress and get to joy. But all you needed were the emotional tools. It's emotional processing, not cognitive processing. And once you have those tools, you'll begin to understand that it's never been your fault, that there is a pathway forward where you just keep rewiring circuits and your set point goes up. Set your sights on joy. And essentially, when you don't feel good, take it seriously, clear away the stress, get back to your natural state of joy, and the healing chemicals will start changing your brain and your life.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And again, thank you again so much for being here. I think you did an amazing job explaining all of this. Think that there are probably a number of people here who are hearing about this either for the first time or maybe they have heard about it, but they're not as familiar. And so I think this has all been really, really wonderful. And I really appreciate you taking the time because I imagine you are also very busy. Um, And so, and as always, for the moms who are listening, if any of this does resonate and you found it to be valuable, so one, you can go to the website, you can learn more about it, ebt.org. And also, please, share this podcast with other moms that maybe could use some additional support because we are all in this together.
We're all in this together. There's nothing harder than being a mother.
No, absolutely not.
Thank you so much for all you do, Chrissy.
Yes, thank you.